On the frosty day of December 3, 1955, Warren Jeffs graced the world with his presence, not knowing he'd later ascend the throne as the Grand Poobah of the FLDS Church, doubling down as a villainous puppet master of a cult. We're zeroing in on a character by the name of Warren, a ringleader in this circus of the sinister. Brace yourselves, it's a wild ride. And a quick heads up, if topics like sexual assault or harm to minors get under your skin, this episode might be one to skip. Trust me, it's heavy. Alrighty, without further ado, let's cannonball into the deep end of today's tale. But hold your horses. Before we leap into the whirlwind of this saga, let me lay down the backstory for you. Picture this, a time when top hats were the rage and horses were the Teslas of the day. Enter stage left, a young lad of 14, Joseph Smith, who starts turning heads with talk of divine gems sliding into his vision inbox. Joe was on the hunt for a spiritual squad to roll with, but alas, he found himself at a crossroads. In a twist worthy of a primetime drama, he declares that the big guy upstairs gave him the celestial cold shoulder on joining any existing club because, apparently, they'd all strayed from the OG divine blueprint. The plot thickens when he's told to kickstart his own spiritual fan club. And get this, in one of these heavenly Zoom calls, he's sent on a treasure hunt to his backyard woods to dig up something special. Talk about a divine Easter egg hunt. So Joseph does what any visionary treasure hunter would do. He digs where the celestial coordinates point. And what does he find? Not your run-of-the-mill library book, but a dazzling golden tome shimmering with otherworldly wisdom. This wasn't your everyday bedtime reading. It was loaded with divine directives, coded in a language that definitely wasn't on Rosetta Stone. Joseph, now moonlighting as an ancient text translator, deciphers this golden manuscript into what we now know as the Book of Mormon. Imagine, without a single tweet, TikTok, or viral meme, Joseph's follower count skyrockets to the tens of thousands. In an era where going viral meant catching the common cold, he managed it through sheer word of mouth and some good old-fashioned preaching. Suddenly, he's not just Joe, he's the main man, the prophet with a capital P, captivating crowds who hung on his every translated word. Without a smidgen of skepticism, the crowd was convinced that Joseph was the real deal, a direct hotline to the heavens. This was the spark that ignited the Church of Christ, around the groovy year of 1841. Then, Joseph decided to throw a curveball into his sermons, polygamy, or, as he pitched it, the VIP ticket to celestial glory. He wasn't just winging it. Joseph backed up his claims with some deep cuts from the Old Testament, showing that the biblical VIPs weren't exactly one-woman men. He told his flock, listen up, folks, if you're aiming for the top-tier afterlife experience, the celestial kingdom, you're gonna need to expand your marital portfolio. In a hold my beer moment, he pointed out even Moses, the OG prophet, was working with a trio. So if you're dreaming of heavenly high society, you're gonna need to up those rookie numbers. Landing this triple marriage deal became the gold standard of heavenly aspirations. The gentlemen in the crowd started hustling like never before, aiming to hit that celestial marriage jackpot. Meanwhile, the ladies were on the lookout, not just for any Joe Schmoo, but for a guy either already sporting a duo of spouses or showing promise in the Tri-Wife League. Now, if you ended up on the other side with a solo or duo matrimony score, the Afterlife's VIP lounge was off limits. Instead, your marital team would be relegated to celestial support staff. This quest for a trio of matrimonial bliss wasn't a walk in the park. You needed the prophet Joseph's thumbs up, a divine endorsement to expand your earthly and heavenly household. This wasn't just about playing the field, it was about securing your eternal VIP status, as per Joseph's latest divine directive. So picture this, the guys were bending over backwards, practically doing cartwheels to catch the prophet's eye, all in the quest for that magical number 3 in the wife department. Fast forward to Utah, circa 1904, and boom, the state decides to flip the script. Until then, polygamy was the talk of the town, everyone living their best life, free as birds. Suddenly, Utah throws a wrench in the works, declaring, nope, that's a no-go on the multi-spouse lifestyle. This community, which had been about the more the merrier approach to marriage, was now in a pickle. You had mega families where everyone was siblings or sister wives, sharing meals, chores, and life under one big roof. It was a real-life sitcom without the laugh track. Then, out of left field, the church gives the government's new rule, leaving everyone spinning. It was like being at a family reunion and suddenly being told you're not allowed to have seconds. A major plot twist for the group. So, the congregation hit a crossroads and thought, let's not ruffle any legal feathers. With that, they put the kibosh on the whole multiple partners parade, which inevitably led to a family feud, church style. You had one faction clinging to the old ways, itching to keep the polygamy party going, while the other camp was all about playing it by the book, adhering to Uncle Sam's new rulebook. This rift birthed a whole new squad, the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka the FLDCs, stepping onto the scene in 1986. Then, along came Rulon Jeff, sliding into the leadership slot like he owned the place. As the fresh-faced president and prophet, he decided to crank things up to 11. Rulon was like, forget the trio, we're going unlimited. Suddenly, it wasn't just about having 3 wives, it was about collecting spouses like baseball cards. 20, 30, 50. The more, the merrier, he preached. Stack 'em up, and you're stocking your VIP points for the celestial after-party. And just like that, the church took a wild turn into uncharted territories, with Rulon at the helm, steering towards a spouse spree like no other. Rulon, in a feat that would make even a reality TV show blush, racked up a staggering wife count estimates pin it somewhere in the ballpark of 63 to 75. We're not talking about a modest half dozen or a quirky quintet. This man was collecting wives like they were limited edition stamps. Picture it, 63 to 75. It's enough to make you wonder if he was starting his own personal fan club or just really misunderstood the concept of collect 'em all. Let's not overlook the fact that by the time he was orchestrating this matrimonial marathon, Rulon was cruising through his ADS, turning the charm on for brides that kept getting younger, dipping into the late teen years, which is all kinds of wrong. This wasn't just about having a sprawling family tree, it was about fulfilling those wifely duties, a euphemism that barely scratches the surface of the eyebrow-raising setup. Truly, a scenario that veers into the what on earth territory? Picture this, a 20-year-old tying the knot with someone in their ADS. It begs the question, what's the deal with going for someone so much younger? It's not like starting a soccer team's worth of kids is on the agenda. This scenario screams creep alert at decibels that would make a rock concert blush. Roland, our protagonist in this bizarre tale, wasn't just a prolific husband. He was a father to a small village, 60 kids to be exact, with 33 boys and 27 girls to his name. His followers, deep in the throes of devotion, affectionately dubbed him Uncle Rand, a moniker as unsettling as his notorious catchphrase, "Keep Sweet." For those of you who haven't spiraled down the rabbit hole of Netflix documentaries, Keep Sweet is less about sugar and more about blind obedience. It translates to a life of no backtalk, all follow through. Having a rough day? Keep sweet. Life throwing curveballs? Slap on a smile and keep sweet, a mantra insisting on perpetual cheerfulness and unwavering faith, no matter the personal cost. If you're curious about diving deeper into this surreal saga, there's a documentary waiting to blow your mind wide open. If you're not with us, you're missing out on heaven. Sounds like the ultimate cult catchphrase, doesn't it? If that doesn't scream cult vibes, I don't know what does. It's downright eerie. There was no room for debate among the followers. It was do or die, metaphorically speaking. Keep sweet and follow the script, he dictated, a rule etched in stone. The folks in this community were practically marooned in their own little world, cut off from the hustle and bustle of modern life, nestled away in a desert hideaway as if they were the last people on Earth. The men had the exclusive privilege of stepping out into the wider world for work, their businesses serving as their only bridge to the outside. Meanwhile, the young women were kept in the dark, their knowledge of the world beyond as barren as the desert surrounding them. Schooling was an inside job, tailored to ensure the community remained a self-sustaining bubble. They were schooled in the art of community maintenance, with no lessons on navigating life beyond their compound walls. Their compound was a jack of all trades, housing their schools, grocery stores, and farmlands. Everything they needed was right there in their self-contained universe. The curriculum was strictly Compound 101, with no attention paid to fostering self-esteem or imparting life skills, unless it involved keeping the community machine well-oiled. In this alternate universe, voting was a myth. The president might as well have been a fairy tale character, and wars. Those were just stories from another dimension. No TVs to binge watch, no smartphones to scroll through. This was a digital detox taken to the extreme. Imagine living in such a bubble. It's the stuff of spooky campfire tales. The curriculum for young girls was straight out of Housewife Handbook, cleaning, cooking, and catering to every whim of the family. The wifely duties class was a core subject. As for the boys, they were treading on thin ice, living in a constant state of high alert. Given the community's all-in on polygamy, boys were more expendable than girls, making the male-to-female ratio more critical than a stock market balance. Step out of line and you're out of the club, no second chances. These guys had to play it by the book, eyes peeled, always on their best behavior. Displease the prophet, and it's goodbye. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. And with no knowledge of the world beyond their secluded bubble, being cast out was like being teleported to an alien planet. For these boys, life was a high-stakes game of Simon Says with the prophet holding the buzzer. This was their reality, no alternatives. The fear instilled in them was next level, a psychological thriller played out in real life. Those who got the boot became known as the Lost Boys, a title that didn't discriminate by age. Whether you were 10 or teetering on adulthood, showing too much spine, or just catching the prophet's eye the wrong way meant instant exile. Off they went, banished from their world, leaving everything and everyone they knew behind. No re-entry, no mercy. It was a chilling scenario, like being written off from a script where you once played the main character. Banished lads were given a one-way ticket to the hot seat by the prophet, who claimed they were headed straight for the fiery depths talk about a guilt trip. The fashion scene within this community was like stepping back into a period drama. Ladies rocked floor-length pastel gowns that covered them from neck to ankle, complemented by hairstyles that screamed vintage chick. The gents, meanwhile, suited up as if they were perpetually heading to a high-stakes business meeting, complete with jackets and ties, a bold choice for the sweltering Utah desert. Adherence to the rules was the name of the game in this community. Wives were expected to follow their husband's lead without question, while the men slaved away, funneling their earnings into the church's coffers. These were no amateur entrepreneurs. We're talking about top-tier talent here. Electricians, builders, and farmers so adept they could have given old MacDonald a run for his money, raking in the dough, only to hand over every dime beyond their basic needs to the church. Living off the grid, this group made a point of keeping the government at arm's length, creating their own little world where Uncle Sam's reach didn't extend. Skipping out on taxes meant the church's coffers were overflowing, especially when you factor in that many members were also tapping into food stamps. It paints a picture of a financial juggernaut, all under the guise of religious devotion, with the profits piling up for the prophet. This wasn't just for kicks. It was a strict entry fee for men who wanted to remain in the community's good graces. Flashback to 1955, Rulon's offspring, Warren Jeffs, made his grand entrance into the world 2 months ahead of schedule. This tiny pre-me was hailed as nothing short of a divine gift, marked for greatness from his very first breath. Raised on a pedestal, Warren was the apple of his father's eye, soaking up his sermons and mimicking his every move. Picture being the standout star in a family of 63 and beyond. It's no surprise Warren wore the crown of the golden child. Fast forward a bit, and Warren's wearing the principal's hat at the community's own Altar Academy. Known for running a tight ship, he was every bit the disciplinarian his father was, if not more. This role inflated his ego to colossal proportions, with Warren wielding his newfound authority like a king in his court, right from the word go. Warren had a disturbing habit of pulling kids out of class under the guise of divine instruction, subjecting them to unimaginable horrors. These young souls, petrified into silence, were coerced into believing this nightmare was somehow a divine mandate. The stakes were sky high, especially for the boys, who knew stepping a toe out of line could mean exile from their world. The shadow of fear Warren cast over these kids was monstrous, making the reality of their situation even more harrowing, given his position as the prophet's offspring, a figure of immense reverence. The heartbreak escalates with allegations from within his own family circle, including his sister and daughter, pointing to abuses against children as young as 5 or 6. The whole scenario spirals into the realms of the grotesque. As Warren eyed his father Ruon's prophetic throne with unchecked ambition, the elder Jeff's health waned until he passed. Surrounded by his wives, at 92, a stark contrast to his bold claim of reaching 150. This event raised more than a few eyebrows within the community, sparking whispers and side glances. Yet, amid the murmurs, the community's rules clamped down on any overt expressions of doubt or dissent, leaving the air thick with unspoken questions and the heavy weight of silence. Warren spun a tale for his followers, claiming he and his late father had merged spirits, making them a singular entity in the eyes of their congregation. This narrative seemed to click perfectly, but then Warren took a dark turn. He proclaimed to his father's myriad wives, "Surprise! I'm your hubby now." Picture this. A man decides to marry his dad's wives, some of whom had a hand in raising him. It's a plot twist that veers into the realm of the utterly bizarre, making 2 wives bolt away. Under Warren's reign, the community felt the squeeze of his iron grip, with some members finding the escalating madness too hot to handle and making their escape. In 2003, Warren decided to expand his empire, securing a whopping 1,700-acre plot dubbed the Yearning for Zion Ranch. Pitched to the outside world as a hunting retreat, this was anything but. Warren had grand designs for this land, envisioning a new utopia for his followers. He issued the command, "Liquidate everything you own. We're relocating to Utopia." This marked the beginning of a bold yet troubling new chapter for Warren and his followers. Naturally, the flock heeded Warren's call, packing up their lives for the promised sanctuary of the new ranch. Warren, with a flair for the dramatic, insisted on a swift exodus under the guise of an impending apocalypse, a classic misdirection. In reality, A major event was on the horizon in Utah, and Warren, feeling the heat of potential exposure, decided it was time to dial up the secrecy and head for the hills, or more accurately, an even more secluded ranch. Upon settling in, they constructed a behemoth of a temple spanning 29,000 square feet, a testament to their isolation and Warren's ambition. It's baffling that this architectural giant remained under the radar, with no state officials dropping by to check out the goings-on. By 2014, Warren's paranoia had seemingly ramped up, resulting in a dramatic purge of 20 men from the community, with a pointed finger and a stern, you, and you, and you, yeah, all of you, out. He sent them packing, thinning the ranks with his arbitrary decree. Say adios to your kids, your wives, and hit the road, was essentially Warren's mandate. He then ordered the wives to erase all traces of their former husbands, including photographs, effectively wiping their memories clean before reallocating them to new spouses. Imagine men with sprawling families suddenly reassigned like office furniture to someone deemed more worthy by Warren's whims. The level of manipulation was off the charts, catapulting Warren into the realm of supervillainy. Warren's reign of disruption didn't hit a snag until 2004, when the arm of the law finally caught up with him. It all started with a lawsuit from one of his nephews, accusing Warren of childhood abuse. By then, the nephew had cut ties with the ranch, stepping into the light with his story and a book titled The Lost Boys. This tell-all dove deep into the tales of those cast out by the community, shining a light on the dark corners of Warren's leadership. Suddenly, Warren found himself in the eye of a legal storm, with lawsuits raining down from the so-called Lost Boys and other former members eager to see justice served. Things were spiraling out of control for Warren by then. In a disturbing turn of events, a 14-year-old girl found herself pressured into marrying her cousin, a match she vehemently opposed. Despite her pleas to her parents and even Uncle Warren himself, her cries fell on deaf ears, with Warren insisting it was divinely ordained. Unable to stomach the thought, she made a bold escape from the ranch and sought help from the police, leading to an arrest warrant being issued for Warren. Suspicion had been brewing around the group for a while, but every attempt to probe the adults met with stone-faced resistance. Their answers were clipped, rehearsed, eerily monotonous, as if they were robots programmed with a very limited script. The authorities were at a standstill, unable to penetrate the ironclad loyalty within the community. However, the heat was on Warren. Catching wind of the law's closing grip, Warren vanished into thin air as he became a fugitive on the lam. Warren transformed into an action movie star on the run, swapping his spiritual garb for the thrill of sports cars and motorcycles, and even hitting up places he'd previously condemned as sinful dens. While he indulged in a life of excess, his community was back home, fervently praying for his well-being, convinced of his innocence and righteousness. The level of devotion and denial was astonishing, with the community's belief in Warren's divinity only strengthening amid his escapades. The mental gymnastics performed by the followers to justify their support for Warren were Olympic level. It was a spectacle of loyalty and brainwashing that would leave scholars scratching their heads in disbelief. Despite Warren's blatant hypocrisy, living it up in ways he'd labeled as evil, the community rallied, scraping together every penny to fund his fugitive lifestyle. Meanwhile, Warren topped America's most wanted list, adding another layer of drama to this real-life soap opera. Let's not forget the wife of Ruland who made a break for it, refusing to marry Warren. She became a critical voice against the practices within the community, shedding light on the twisted rituals involving seed-bearers, men handpicked by the prophet to propagate his chosen lineage, in ceremonies that were disturbing and husbands relegated to mere spectators in their own marriages. Just when you think you've hit peak absurdity, the saga takes another dive into the deep end of "you can't make this up." It's like living inside a thriller novel that refuses to end. Warren's on the lam, pulling a Houdini while law enforcement plays a high-stakes game of "Where's Waldo?" With him, the community's lips are sealed tighter than a drum, no one's singing, despite the growing pressure. Then, in a twist straight out of a crime drama, Warren's brother gets nabbed during what starts as a routine traffic stop. Lo and behold, he's cruising with a small fortune in the trunk, over $100,000 in cold, hard cash. It's like breadcrumbs leading to the bigger fish, as the pieces of the Warren puzzle start falling into place. The plot thickens and the FBI takes the lead, turning the search into a full-blown manhunt. And then, in 2006, in the neon desert of Nevada, our fugitive makes a flashy mistake, a red Cadillac Escalade. In a world where red is the color of taboo, Warren's choice of getaway car was as loud as a siren, finally putting an end to his run from justice. It's the kind of irony that you couldn't script any better. Ruland had a strict no-red policy, preaching to his followers that red was a big no-no, claiming it was the color of mischief, to be avoided at all costs. Yet there's Warren, flamboyantly flouting the rules in a Crimson Chariot, a 2007 model, no less, in the year 2006. Picture that, fresh off the assembly line, not a mile on the odometer, cruising in what must have felt like a mobile contradiction to his own teachings. Caught with over $50,000, a collection of computers, a plethora of cell phones, wigs, and a variety of other disguises, not to mention accompanied by one of his many spouses, Warren's arrest was as dramatic as his lifestyle. Now behind bars, he somehow continued to pull the strings of his community, turning his cell into a makeshift pulpit. From jail, he dialed in sermons, penned books, and issued commands, proving that not even prison walls could curb his influence or his flair for the dramatic. He continued to give orders to the crazy people who believed that Warren was a true prophet of God. This made them even more convinced that he was the chosen one, while they said they would crucify him just like they crucified Jesus. It is shocking and sad that this is happening at a time when he tried to unlive himself in 2007, but that didn't work and he is still alive today. In 2008, when the situation became very bad, someone called a Department of Domestic Violence hotline and reported that a 16-year-old girl had been forced to marry on the ranch. This was enough for investigators to get a search warrant to search the entire compound. It turned out to be a false call, but they still went in anyway because they needed to do a welfare check. It was a large operation and they weren't expecting what they found. They thought there were 500 people living in the community and that there were 400 children alone, 25 mothers under 18, and 53 girls between 14 and 17 years of age who were either pregnant or already pregnant. This is insane. These are children, and it only gets worse. When they entered the large temple, what they saw was just another level sinister. They had these high-seated altar beds, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. They thought there were 500 people living in the community and that there were 400 children alone, 25 mothers under 18, and 53 girls between 14 and 17 years of age who were either pregnant or already pregnant. This is insane. These are children, and it only gets worse. When they entered the large temple, what they saw was just another level sinister. They had these high-seated altar beds, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There was a vault in the temple, and when they entered it, they found that the vault child had recordings of Warren's journals of him doing things to his child wives, including a 12-year-old wife. There is one recording that I cannot believe I am saying this, but on this recording, it is Warren with his 12-year-old wife teaching her to please him. On this recording, you can hear Warren asking her if she feels the presence of God in her. He then says that he will go to the pits of hell if they have a bottomless pit. He also says that she will not even be a wife and that he will not address her as a victim. The 12-year-old wife even ended up pregnant. The worst part is that his other wives knelt and watched him. This did not just happen once. This is something that is repeated over and over again every day. It is something that should be locked away for life imprisonment period for all adults in the community. Warren is tucked away behind bars, serving a life sentence with 20-plus years, stacked no chance of parole, exactly where many believe he belongs. For those tuning into his recordings, there's an undeniable chill that runs down your spine. His voice, his mannerisms, there's an eerie aura about him that's hard to shake off. He claims divine encounters within the confines of his cell, stating that the Lord God of Heaven paid him a visit just a couple of days back to impart tests and revelations. Despite his imprisonment, Warren's influence remarkably persists, with him somehow managing to maintain a hold over a segment of his followers from his cell. While some have broken away from the fold, a significant number still cling to the belief that Warren is a messenger of the divine, showcasing the deep and complex bond between a charismatic leader and his devoted followers. In an era where information is at our fingertips, the fact that there are still folks out there who buy into this is mind-boggling. Not to come off as insensitive clearly, there's some heavy-duty indoctrination at play here, but it's wild to say the least. As for my take on this whole saga, I'm honestly at a loss for words. The levels of distress and trauma, to the point where Warren's own son felt compelled to end his suffering, highlight the dark shadows cast by this community. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this whole situation. Drop your insights and opinions below. Let's get a conversation going. Consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. It's a huge boost for me and my content. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll be back with more stories next week. Until then, let's make a pact to look out for each other, especially the most vulnerable among us. Catch you in the next video, and remember, stay safe out there. Farewell for now.